Hi everyone, welcome back to the Colour Cave where we like to play with art stuff. It's Jem here and today I am taking you through my epic Alice drawing with Copic markers. You can see that I'm not in my usual cave position, and that was because I was on puppy watching duty, so I'm sitting here with my light pad in my lounge just so I could keep an eye on the little troublemaker. And all I'm doing here is I am tracing onto a fresh sheet of paper, having used the original sketch underneath as a basis to go on, and all I wanted to do was get some nice clean and crisp lines so that when it came to colouring I had nice defined margins to work to. Now this did take me quite a bit of time and I had to make some corrections as I went along because I realised I'd made a lot of sort of lazy mistakes when I was doing the initial sketch, but I wasn't too worried because it was just a rough sketch. So here are all the incarnations up till this point. This was the original rough sketch in my sketchbook, and you can see it is very sketchy. I was really just figuring out how much I could fit in an A4 sheet when I was doing this, but everything went well. So this was a scanned copy. All I did was scan my sketchbook into the computer, and that was to allow me to use the light pad to do this much sort of smoother, more polished version. And here it is. So this is my finished article and I have printed it on to Spectrum Noir marker paper. It's actually more like cardstock, it's quite thick. So this is the one that I'm going to colour, and I'm going to colour it using Copic markers. I have saved this as a PDF, so if any of you would like to colour this in, please feel free to get in touch with me and I will send you the PDF for your own colouring enjoyment. I kind of have committed to memory the entire film. Way back I talked about the fact that I was obsessed with this film as a child, and I know the script start to finish, I know all the words and the songs, and likewise I know most, maybe not all, but most of the colours that things should be. So I'm quite excited about that in itself, just because I'm not going to have to do a lot of reference work. There may be one or two, but generally speaking will be okay. So in my head I wanted to have quite a sort of dark background to keep that impression of Tulgey Wood, and Tulgey Wood is a very sort of odd forest where everything's a bit sort of shady and shadowy and you're not sure whether Alice is in danger or whether she's safe. There's lots of strange creatures, like our little brush dog who brushes the path away from her when she's trying to find her way home. So I want to try and keep the background as dark as possible, but obviously with the main characters I'm going to spend a bit more time getting everything absolutely right. So I do have a scrap of just cheap marker paper here, and that's just to test my colours out on because I'm not entirely sure what combinations of things are going to go well with others. Let's get started. The place I'm going to start is down with the little honky duck things, I don't know what they're called. Because they are very purple, and I have just been using purples the other day with my Spyro, so I think that's a good place to start. So let's go. The first thing that sort of struck me, and I came across it quite quickly, was I realised that I was going to have a limitation in completing this piece, and that is due to the selection of Copic markers that I have. Roughly, I think I have about 100, and normally when I'm using Copics or any other alcohol marker, when I want to get some sort of depth and a 3D effect in the picture, I'll use a blend of sometimes 3 or 4 colours, and I knew that because of the limited palette that I had, that I probably wouldn't be able to do that with the picture. So I had to pick my colours very carefully, but also at the same time I was trying to stick as closely to the original colour palette from the Disney film as possible. So that was kind of a limitation, and it's a limitation that I wouldn't have had with pencils. However, I really wanted to do this. It spoke to me and it was screaming out to be coloured in marker. So I decided just to go for it and see how I get on. So the upshot of that was that rather than spending lots of time getting really sort of detailed, deep, you know, dimensions going on, I kind of kept it a bit simpler. But if you've ever seen the film, or if you want to go and watch the film, it's awesome, by the way, you can see that a lot of the time the colours are actually very flat in the animation. So I suppose really I'm kind of sticking to the original theme, as it were, in doing that. So most of my blends are 2 colour blends, and it's really just to give a dark and a light in order to get some shadows in and that kind of things. One marker that I did use a lot throughout the entire piece was W1, which is Warm Grey 1. It's the palest of the warm greys, and I found it really helpful to add a bit of shadow onto things that were white. And specifically, I think it's maybe just the time period that the film was made in. It did come out, I think it was 1957 it came out, but there are a lot of white collars, especially on the gentleman, and that just gave it a little bit of depth. And you can see the inside of the Queen of Hearts collar just there at the right hand side of the screen. That's where the warm grey has gone down, and it just gives that little bit of, you know, variation, and it lets the front of the collar that is white stand out as well. So I did use that marker quite a lot throughout the entire piece. My entire favourite thing to colour out of this whole page was the Mad Hatter, and it's just because the colour matching was really good. I was so pleased with how his hat turned out, and I was really happy with him in general. So out of everything that I coloured, I would say he's probably the most artistically accurate, as well as the colour matching. It's just really, I didn't find that anything was lost in translation when I was colouring him, whereas with some of the other characters, between tracing them from my original sketch and having the limitations of the colour palette, things got a little bit lost, and I don't really know how to explain that. It's like a copy of a copy of a copy. You're going to lose some of the original character of the, you know, whatever it is you're drawing. Now, whether that is your artistic style or because you've gone close to the original from the original style, it's really difficult to explain. I hope somebody knows what I mean though. And I did feel that with a few of the characters, that they were just sort of like poor duplicates really, which is a bit of a shame, but I did my best, and I have to keep reminding myself that, especially when it comes to things like this, I'm really new to this. I don't draw a lot of cartoons. My Copic marker experience is quite limited as well, and there was a point when I was colouring this that I really thought to myself, oh Jem, you've really bitten off more than you can chew here. You know, there's nothing like chucking yourself in at the deep end. However, I persevered, and I'm really glad that I did. It was quite challenging in places though, I am not going to lie. Okay, I know I said that the Mad Hatter was my favourite, but the March Hare comes a close second, and again I think it's because the colours are quite close. I managed to do a reasonable job with what I had, and I am particularly pleased with his mint coloured teacup and saucer. I really like the pose that he's in as well, and I think I've managed to capture the sort of character of him sitting in that pose as well. So in terms of my drawing skills, I would say I'm probably most happy with the March Hare, because he just looks like he's supposed to look like, which is kind of the aim of the game, so that's good. And on to our Cheshire Cat as well. He turned out okay. At this point I realised I was sorely lacking a true magenta colour, so when I go to buy in my next batch of Copics, it is something that I will definitely be buying. I had sort of raspberry colours and I had pinky purples, but I didn't have one that was really bright, and the raspberry colour that I've used, and I think that's actually what it's called, was the closest thing I could get. But again, I think he actually turned out okay in terms of the colour scheme, so I was alright with that too. So for any of you that saw my spiral video, you would have seen my pen slip, And lo and behold, the same thing happened here, not once but twice. I dropped my yellow marker right at the start and left a big squish over the caterpillar's face, and you can see there that the doorknob that's just passed, I had a big grey streak as well, and the same thing happened. I have no idea how the second one happened. I wasn't even aware that I'd done it. So when I started colouring in the door, I just tried to salvage it as best I could, but it is a really bad habit I have, and the fact that I don't even know what I'm doing, it's not very good. So it's something I'm going to have to keep an eye on moving forward, because I can't have like multicoloured streaks in the right hand corner of every single Copic drawing that I ever do. And this is definitely the least favourite part of my drawing coming up, and that was the flowers. The little pansies were so fiddly, and I really didn't think that my standard of drawing was particularly good, and it was trying to cram them in and get their facial features and their angles and everything. And again, when it came to colouring them, I couldn't find the right hues of the different colours to match up to what I wanted, again particularly with the pansies. So I was really unhappy with this part of the drawing. However, the only saving grace was that it's down in the left hand corner, so it's not like a mainstay or a focal point of the picture, so I'm just chalking that one up to experience. But I think if I was going to redraw it, I would have maybe only one or two pansies and make them a little bit bigger, so that I could work on their features and everything, and probably wait until I've got some more Copic markers as well, so that I could give them their rightful colours as well. My tiger and my lion I was very pleased with, though. They turned out really well, as did the crazy daisy with the floppy I was going to say leaves, here I go again, petals. She turned out really well as well, so you win some, you lose some. But that bottom left hand corner, I just kind of like pretend it's not there. When I show the picture to people, I'm going to put my thumb in that corner and hold the paper by that corner so people can't see it. I had a bit of a quandary when deciding what colour to do the trees, because I did want to keep a dark background, and really I would have liked really dark bluey purples for the trees in fitting with the film. However, again, due to a limited palette, and by this point I was also very limited in time, I decided to go down the sort of pastel route instead, and it's just really to have a contrast with the dark background. I was pleased with the choice of the green. Over the other side, I did one in kind of like a sort of orangey pastel shade. That should be coming up pretty soon, you'll see for yourself. Yeah, and it was far too close to the skin tones of Tweedledum and Tweedledee, and I think I did myself a bit of a disservice. Perhaps I should have picked more of an orangey hue. And again, oranges are something that I am sorely lacking in my Copic collection. So in order to bring some contrast to that, I did use a more orangey colour when I was putting the detail in the trunk, just to kind of break it up and differentiate between poor Tweedledum and Tweedledee there, so poking out in the corner. Again, there was a stage where I was thinking about omitting them from the drawing altogether, because again, their character really deserves like their whole bodies and everything, but I just didn't have room to squeeze it all in, and that is the honest truth. And onto the background. This took longest out of everything, and I learned something as well. I wanted a bit of a gradient going from dark into that sort of paler, I think it's bluish lavender or something like that. And I realised that for true saturation on this particular paper, which is the Spectrum Noir marker cardstock, then you really need a minimum of 3 layers of your Copic ink for it to really blend in and for the paper to saturate properly so that you don't get those streaks. It was incredibly easy to get a gradient though, and that is one of the joys of markers. As long as you work quickly, you can get nice smooth fades, and you'll see better when you see the finished article at the end. But I was quite impressed with how I managed to get the sky going from darkest at the top down to the sort of paler colour further down. I did want a bit of a sort of mottled effect, I didn't want it looking like like a sheet glass or anything, but I didn't want it to be streaky, so you could see the actual marker lines. So I'm pretty sure that I was happy enough at the time that I've succeeded in that, and it was sort of quite satisfying in the end up. I did want to stick in the sort of same colour palette for the entire background, but I felt using that colour all the way down behind the main characters at the front was just going to be a bit samey, so I plumped for the colour that I did the walrus's jacket, and you can see earlier on that I'd incorporated that into a sort of fade into really dark grey, because I didn't want to have the fiddling about drawing, trying to put in parts of the bottom half of his body. So that actually worked in my favour here because it kept everything quite uniform all the way across that bottom section of the page, and again, being the darker colours, they were nice and easy to blend, and it turned out quite smoothly. And here I went back because I decided that the top wasn't dark enough, so I went to C8, whereas previously it was C6 that was at the top, and even after it was dry it was really easy to go back in and blend. And finally, I'm just adding a pop of colour, and this was basically the leftovers. These were the things that I didn't really know what colour I was going to make them. So I picked out colours that I hadn't used, and honestly I think I used every single Copic marker that I own, bar maybe 2 or 3 in this picture. So these sort of dregs of the drawing, shall we say, I just picked out nice bright colours that hadn't already been used. There was an awful lot of violets and purples and a lot of oranges and reds just because of the characters, so that's why I picked like the really royal blue and the greens as well, because apart from the Mad Hatter there's actually not an awful lot of green characters, and I thought just the foreground was better just to be a nice neutral colour, so I picked a sort of soily colour, and that was dull ivory. and that seemed to work quite well, and it contrasted quite well with the rest of the drawing as well. So a little bit of gel pen here just to make things a little bit more exciting, and yeah, just sort of add the finishing touches really, which that worked out quite well as well. The jelly rolls that I'm using there, they do stand out really well on dark paper, so that was quite good too. And there is the finished article. All that's left for me is to sign it. Please let me know what you think. Have I done a good job with this? Could I have done more? Should I not have done it at all? There's quite a sense of achievement out of it, so that made me really happy. I did it, and yeah, I'm glad I did it, although it took me forever. So thumbs up if you liked the video, that would be awesome. And you can leave me a comment in the box down below if there's anything else you'd like to see or add to what's going on. And we'll see you next time in the Colour Cave, guys. Have a good day, and we'll be back with the next video on Friday. Bye for now.